Lady Eveline Marrow stood alone beneath the golden chandeliers while the entire ballroom pretended not to stare, but they were staring, at her untouched hand, at the Duke who had just denied her without even looking at her. I have never offered Lady Eveline any expectation beyond friendship, Duke Lucian Ashcombe said calmly before the royal court. I would not wish society to misunderstand her position beside me. Soft laughter moved through the ballroom like silk dragged across glass. Eveline felt every whisper land against her skin. The musicians continued playing. Servants continued pouring wine. Nobles smiled behind jeweled fans as though humiliation were another form of entertainment. Lucian remained standing beside Princess Celestine of Valmir, beautiful, untouchable, politically perfect. And Eveline suddenly understood something terrible. 7 years of loving him had ended in a single sentence, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. Like a candle finally dying after burning too long, she lowered her eyes before anyone could see the pain there. I see, she said softly. Lucian finally glanced toward her then, only briefly. His expression remained unreadable, but she knew him too well. There had been hesitation in his eyes, regret perhaps, but not enough, never enough. The princess smiled politely toward Eveline. Lady Marrow, I hope no offense was taken. At all, your highness. Her voice did not shake. That seemed to unsettle Lucian more than tears would have. Eveline curtsied gracefully before turning away from them both. The crowd parted immediately, not out of kindness, out of fascination. Everyone in the capital knew Lady Eveline Marrow adored the Duke of Ashcombe. They knew she attended his estates, managed his charities, stood beside him at every winter gathering while he remained unmarried year after year. They also knew he had never chosen her. Tonight, he had finally made certain the entire kingdom understood it. Outside, rain struck the palace windows. Eveline walked through the empty corridor alone, her hands trembling only after the ballroom disappeared behind her. For 7 years she had endured rumors with quiet dignity. The woman the Duke keeps close but never loves, the woman waiting for a proposal that will never come, the woman foolish enough to mistake gratitude for affection. Tonight even she could no longer defend him. A footman hurried after her. Lady Eveline, your carriage. No carriage, she said softly. I would prefer to walk. But my lady, the rain. I know. The cold night air struck her face the moment she stepped outside. Rain soaked her silk sleeves within seconds. Still, she kept walking. The city glowed beneath gas lamps and silver rain. Carriages rolled through flooded streets while music drifted faintly from the palace behind her. 7 years. She had sold her late mother's jewels to help save Ashcombe estate from ruin after Lucian's father died beneath mountains of debt. She had secretly paid servants during the harsh winter when Lucian believed his staff remained loyal out of devotion alone. She had protected his younger brother from scandal after a reckless gambling disaster nearly destroyed the Ashcombe name. And Lucian had never known, because loving him had never felt like sacrifice, until tonight. A carriage suddenly slowed beside her. Lady Eveline. She looked up. Captain Adrian Mercer stepped down into the rain. For a moment she barely recognized him. He had left for war nearly 4 years earlier. Society had once adored him before rumors spread that he died overseas. But he was alive, tall, broad-shouldered, older now, and staring at her with immediate concern. You are drenched, he said quietly. I seem to be. You should not be alone, she almost smiled. Lucian had once said the exact same thing to her years ago, before distance replaced warmth. I am quite accustomed to it, she answered. Adrian studied her face carefully. Something has happened. Looked away toward the rain-dark street, she whispered. I believe something finally ended. Back at the palace, Lucian stood motionless near the ballroom window. Princess Celestine continued speaking beside him, but he barely heard her. His eyes remained fixed on the rain outside, on the empty palace steps where Eveline had disappeared. You were harsh, his younger brother Rowan murmured beside him. Lucian's jaw tightened. Necessary. She looked heartbroken. She understood. Even he heard the uncertainty in his own voice. Rowan stared at him for a long moment. One day she will stop waiting for you. Lucian looked away sharply. She has waited 7 years, he said coldly, as though that guaranteed she always would. But somewhere deep beneath the calm restraint he wore so perfectly, unease had already begun spreading through him like winter frost. And for the first time in years, the thought of Eveline walking away felt less like impossibility and more like fear. The following morning, society devoured the scandal. By noon, Every drawing room in the capital buzzed with whispers about Lady Evelyn Marrow's humiliation. Some pitied her, most did not. She forced her affection upon the Duke for years. He merely corrected society's assumptions. Poor thing. She looked absolutely shattered. Evelyn heard none of it directly. She spent the morning beside the greenhouse windows of her modest townhouse, quietly arranging white roses while rain continued falling beyond the glass. For the first time in years, no messenger arrived from Ashcombe House requesting her assistance. No letters, no invitations, no Lucian. The silence hurt more than she expected, not because she missed him already, but because part of her had truly believed he would come after her last night, an explanation, an apology, something. Instead, there was only silence. Her maid Clara hesitated near the doorway. "Captain Mercer has called upon you, my lady," blinked in surprise. Adrian Mercer entered moments later carrying a small wrapped parcel. "You left this in my carriage," he said, her gloves she had not even realized. "Thank you." He watched her carefully as she accepted them. "You did not sleep. Neither did you, I think." A faint smile touched his face. Unlike Lucian's restrained perfection, Adrian's expressions felt human, worn, honest. "I heard what happened at court," he said quietly. Evelyn turned back toward the roses. "I would prefer not to discuss it." "Well." He did not press further, that alone nearly undid her. After a moment he spoke again. "You once wrote letters to soldiers during the winter campaigns." She looked surprised. "You remember that? I carried one in my coat for nearly 2 years." Her chest tightened slightly. She remembered writing hundreds of letters for injured soldiers. Simple encouragements, warmth for strangers. She never knew Adrian had received one. "You thanked me for saving your brother," he continued. "Though I had done nothing remarkable. You saved 12 men during the Brayford attack. I failed to save 17. His voice lowered quietly. There it was, the grief behind his calmness. Evelyn looked at him differently then, not as the admired war hero society celebrated, but as a lonely man carrying ghosts. For the first time since the ballroom, her heart softened around someone other than Lucian. At Ashcombe House, Lucian stood in his study while servants prepared for Princess Celestine's arrival that evening. The engagement discussions had moved faster than expected after the banquet. Politically, everything was proceeding perfectly, so why did the entire estate suddenly feel unbearable? "Lady Evelyn has declined tonight's invitation," Rowan informed him casually. Lucian looked up immediately. "Declined?" She claims exhaustion. A strange irritation moved through him. Evelyn never declined Ashcombe invitations, never. She should attend, he said. Rowan gave him a long look. "After last night." Lucian said nothing, because last night kept replaying in his mind with increasing discomfort. Not her humiliation, her expression afterward. There had been no pleading in it, no desperation, only exhaustion, as though she had finally become too tired to continue loving him. The thought unsettled him more than it should have. "She was seen with Adrian Mercer," Rowan added. Lucian's gaze sharpened instantly. "Mercer returned from war 3 weeks ago." Lucian walked toward the window slowly. Rain covered the gardens in silver mist. He remembered Evelyn laughing with Adrian years earlier at a summer gathering. Softly, easily. Lucian had disliked it then for reasons he never examined too closely. Now, unexpectedly, something colder stirred beneath his ribs, jealousy. The realization irritated him immediately. Evelyn was free to speak with whoever she pleased, and yet the image refused to leave him. That evening, while the princess performed beautifully before gathered nobles at Ashcombe House, Lucian found himself glancing repeatedly toward the empty doorway, expecting Evelyn to appear anyway. She always did. Even after arguments, even after neglect, even after being overlooked. But the doorway remained empty. And for the first time in years, Lucian began noticing how quiet the room felt without her there. Winter arrived early that year. The first snow fell across the capital only 10 days after the royal banquet. Evelyn watched it from the library window while Clara read aloud the latest society gossip with increasing outrage. "They are calling the princess the future Duchess of Ashcombe already." Evelyn continued sipping tea calmly. "And apparently Captain Mercer has become the season's great fascination," Clara added. "Half the unmarried ladies in London are desperate for invitations near him. That is hardly surprising. He visits only you." Evelyn lowered her cup slowly. That part was true. Over the past weeks, Adrian had visited often, sometimes for tea, sometimes simply to sit quietly beside the fire while they discussed books or music or memories neither shared easily with others. With him, silence never felt painful, it felt restful. And slowly, dangerously, she realized she had begun looking forward to his visits, not with desperate longing, with peace. Meanwhile, Lucian noticed everything. He noticed Adrian escorting Eveline through Hyde Park beneath falling snow. He noticed her smiling again during a charity concert. Most of all, he noticed something missing from her now: hope. For years, whenever Eveline looked at Lucian, there had always been quiet hope in her eyes. Now there was only politeness. The absence unsettled him more each day. "You are starring again," Princess Celestine observed lightly during a dinner gathering. Lucian looked away from Eveline immediately. "I beg your pardon," the lady in blue. Eveline stood across the ballroom speaking softly with Adrian. She wore midnight silk tonight. Elegant, understated, beautiful. Lucian's chest tightened unexpectedly as Adrian leaned closer to hear her better over the music. "She seems very admired this season," the princess continued. "Yet she hardly notices anyone." Lucian said nothing, because he had noticed the same thing. Eveline no longer sought anyone's approval, not society's, not his. It changed her in ways he could not understand. Later that evening, Lucian crossed paths with her beside the terrace doors. Snow drifted softly beyond the glass. For a moment they stood alone. Neither spoke immediately. Finally, Lucian said quietly, "You have avoided Ashcombe House." Eveline met his gaze calmly. "I thought it best. You misunderstand the situation with the princess." "No," she answered softly. "I think I finally understand it correctly." Something painful moved behind his composed expression. "You are angry." "I was," she admitted. "But anger passes eventually." That unsettled him far more than accusations would have. Lucian stepped closer unconsciously. "Grace," Adrian approached then. The shift in Lucian's expression happened instantly. Subtle, sharp, Adrian noticed. "So did Eveline, Lady Eveline," Adrian said warmly, offering his arm. "The next dance is beginning." Lucian's gaze fell to Adrian's hand near hers. An unfamiliar tension tightened his chest. Eveline hesitated only briefly before accepting Adrian's arm. "Excuse me, Your Grace." Lucian watched them walk toward the ballroom together, watched Adrian smile down at her, watched Eveline smile back. And suddenly, violently, the thought of another man earning her affection became unbearable. Not because he intended to marry her, not because he had promised her anything, but because somewhere along the years, without realizing it, Lucian Ashcombe had grown emotionally dependent upon the quiet certainty of Eveline loving him. And now that certainty was slipping away. The royal engagement announcement arrived 2 weeks later. The entire kingdom celebrated. Church bells rang across London while newspapers praised the future union between Duke Lucian Ashcombe and Princess Celestine. At Ashcombe House, servants prepared for a grand winter ball. Lucian felt none of the triumph everyone expected. "You look miserable," Rowan observed bluntly. Lucian adjusted his cufflinks coldly. "Do not be absurd. You are about to marry a princess." "Yes. Yet you have spent the last hour staring at Eveline's unopened letter." Lucian's eyes shifted toward the desk instinctively. A single envelope rested there. He had not opened it because something inside him feared its contents. Finally, he broke the seal. Inside was only a brief note: "Your Grace, I will be leaving London for some time to stay with relatives in Northumberland. I wish you happiness in your future marriage. Thank you for your years of friendship." Eveline friendship, the word struck him strangely, as though 7 years between them had been reduced to something painfully small. "When does she leave?" he asked quietly. "Tomorrow morning, I believe." Lucian folded the letter slowly. Something sharp and restless began building inside him. At the winter ball that evening, society celebrated the Duke and Princess endlessly. Music echoed through glittering halls while nobles toasted the future Duchess. Then suddenly, conversations shifted. Whispers spread rapidly near the entrance. Lucian turned instinctively and saw Eveline. She wore silver tonight, simple, graceful, unreachable. Adrian Mercer stood beside her. The ballroom seemed to notice them together all at once, not because of scandal, because they fit unexpectedly well. Lucian felt immediate irritation at the sight of Adrian helping her remove her gloves with gentle familiarity. Then he realized something worse. Eveline looked happy, not passionately in love, not desperately emotional, simply peaceful. And somehow that hurt far more. Princess Celestine noticed his attention immediately. "You care for her," she said quietly. Lucian looked away. "No." The princess studied him for a long moment. I think perhaps you do, she answered softly. Across the ballroom, Evelyn sensed Lucian's gaze. For years, his attention would have filled her heart with painful hope. Tonight, it only made her tired. Adrian leaned closer. You are leaving tomorrow, yes. Will you return? She looked toward the snow beyond the tall windows. I do not know. Adrian was quiet for a moment before speaking carefully. If you did not return, I believe London would become far less beautiful. The words surprised her, not because they were dramatic, because they were sincere. Lucian saw the exact moment Evelyn's expression softened toward Adrian. Jealousy hit him so suddenly he nearly crushed the crystal glass in his hand. He crossed the ballroom before thinking better of it. Lady Evelyn. She turned calmly. Lucian struggled unexpectedly for words. He had approached her countless times before. Why did this suddenly feel difficult? You are leaving tomorrow, he said. Yes. For how long? I have not decided. Answer irritated him irrationally. You should not travel alone during winter. Adrian stepped forward slightly. She will not be alone. I intend to escort her north myself. Silence, cold, immediate. Lucian's gaze locked onto Adrian's, and for the first time the rivalry between them became unmistakably real. Evelyn felt the tension instantly, so did half the ballroom. Lucian spoke carefully. That seems unnecessary. Adrian answered just as calmly. I disagree. Something dangerous flickered beneath Lucian's restraint then, not anger. Fear of losing her completely. And for the first time in 7 years, Lucian realized he no longer feared society's judgment nearly as much as he feared watching Evelyn belong to someone else. Snow covered the countryside roads as Evelyn's carriage traveled north through the winter morning. Beside her, Clara slept lightly beneath wool blankets while icy wind rattled the carriage windows. For the first time in years, London felt distant. So did Lucian. The realization should have broken her heart. Instead, there was strange relief in it. No more waiting. No more searching his face for affection that never fully arrived. No more building her life around a man who only noticed her when she began disappearing. A horse suddenly approached beside the carriage. Evelyn looked up sharply. Lucian. Snow covered his dark coat as he rode beside them. Her breath caught slightly. The carriage slowed. Moments later, Lucian stepped inside, bringing cold winter air with him. Clara wisely excused herself to the front seat beside the driver. Silence settled between them immediately. Lucian removed his gloves slowly, watching her. You left without saying goodbye. Looked toward the frosted window. I already did. That letter was not goodbye. It was all that remained to say. His jaw tightened. The carriage rocked softly beneath the storm outside. Finally, Lucian spoke again. Do you love him? The question startled her. Captain Mercer. Yes, she looked at him quietly. For years she had imagined Lucian asking such questions with jealousy hidden beneath his calmness. Now that it happened, sadness touched her more than triumph. I do not know yet, she answered honestly. Lucian looked away sharply. Did you ever love me? The vulnerability in his voice stunned her. Evelyn stared at him carefully then, at the exhaustion beneath his restraint, at the fear he was trying desperately to hide. Yes, she whispered. Very much. Past tense, he heard it immediately. Something inside him seemed to crack. Lucian leaned forward slightly. Evelyn, the engagement to the princess was political necessity, nothing more. You still chose it. I chose responsibility. I understand that now. That frightened him even more. Because she truly sounded calm. No pleading, no hidden hope, only acceptance. I never intended to hurt you. A faint sad smile touched her lips. That may be the cruelest part of all. Snow fell heavily outside while silence thickened between them. Finally, Evelyn reached into her satchel and withdrew several folded documents. These belonged to Ashcombe Estate. Lucian frowned slightly as he opened them. Then his expression changed. Financial records, payments, debt settlements, secret transfers spanning years. His eyes lifted slowly toward her. You paid these. When your father died, the estate was near collapse, she said quietly. I feared the servants would lose their homes. Lucian stared at the pages in disbelief. These amounts, Evelyn, this is your inheritance. It was. He looked shaken for the first time in years. Why would you do this without telling me? Because you already carried too much. His chest tightened painfully. Many sacrifices did you make for me that I never saw? Evelyn looked down at her hands. Enough. Carriage fell silent again, and Lucian suddenly understood something horrifying. Everything he admired about his restored estates, everything society praised him for rebuilding, had been quietly held together by the woman he failed to choose. The realization filled him with unbearable shame. When the carriage finally stopped at the inn for evening shelter, Lucian remained seated motionless while Evelyn stepped into the snow without looking back. And for the first time in his life, the great Duke of Ashcombe realized he had spent years being loved completely, while giving far too little in return. London changed its opinion of Lady Evelyn Marrow almost overnight, not because she demanded recognition, because the truth emerged anyway. Ashcombe's servants spoke quietly of anonymous payments during the famine winters. Old estate managers admitted someone had secretly prevented bankruptcy years earlier. Then Rowan, burdened by guilt, revealed even more. "She protected me," he confessed during a gentlemen's club gathering. "When my gambling debts nearly ruined our family, Evelyn sold her mother's jewels to keep my name from scandal." Was stunned. The woman once mocked as pathetic suddenly became admired, not for chasing the Duke, for loving with extraordinary dignity. Meanwhile, Lucian could barely endure his own reflection. Every room in Ashcombe House reminded him of her now, the garden she restored, the charities she organized, the piano she played during quiet winter evenings. He began noticing her absence everywhere, and it became unbearable. Princess Celestine found him alone one evening beside the library fire. "You love her," she said gently. This time, Lucian did not deny it. "I was a coward." The princess looked at him sadly. "No, merely a man who believed devotion would wait forever." Lucian closed his eyes briefly, because that was exactly what he had believed. "She no longer looks at me the same way." Celestine smiled faintly. "Then perhaps you finally understand how dangerous it is when a woman stops waiting." Days later, Lucian traveled north again, this time not as a duke. As a desperate man, he found Evelyn standing beside a frozen lake near her relative's estate, snow drifting around her silver cloak. For a moment, he simply watched her. She looked peaceful here, and somehow that frightened him more than losing her to another man. Because peace made leaving easier. "Evelyn," she turned slowly. No anger crossed her face, only surprise. "You should not be here." "I could not remain away." Honesty in his voice unsettled her slightly. Lucian stepped closer carefully. "I know now what you sacrificed for me." "You were never meant to know. That does not lessen it." Snowflakes settled against her dark hair while silence stretched between them. Finally, he said quietly, "I have ended the engagement." Her eyes widened slightly. "The kingdom will despise you." "I do not care." But she looked away instead of relieved. That terrified him. "Why are you not angry?" he asked suddenly. "Why do you not demand explanations? Why do you seem so calm?" Evelyn's expression softened sadly. "Because I spent years grieving us while standing beside you." The words hit him like a wound. "You stopped loving me." "I tried not to." Her voice nearly broke then. "But eventually, surviving hurt less than hopping." Lucian felt genuine panic rise inside him, not royal embarrassment. Not wounded pride, panic, because for the first time he realized love could truly end, and he might already be too late. Before he could speak again, another voice interrupted softly. "Lady Evelyn." Adrian approached through the snow. Lucian's expression hardened instantly. Adrian looked between them calmly before turning toward Evelyn. "I received your answer from this morning." Lucian frowned slightly. "What answer?" Evelyn hesitated, then slowly removed a ring from her glove. "I accepted Captain Mercer's proposal." Consumed the frozen lake. Lucian stared at the ring as though the world itself had tilted beneath him. Adrian stepped beside Evelyn protectively, and Lucian realized with sudden horror, someone else had offered her the future he wasted years refusing to give. The weeks before Evelyn's engagement celebration became the cruelest period of Lucian's life. Society discussed nothing else, not the broken royal engagement, not the political scandal, only the tragic romance of the Duke of Ashcombe losing the woman who loved him most. Lucian endured endless whispers. He realized too late she chose the kinder man. Lady Evelyn finally understood her own worth. Word cut deeper because they were true. Meanwhile, Evelyn tried desperately to quiet the conflict inside her heart. Adrian treated her with unwavering gentleness. He listened carefully when she spoke. He noticed her silences. He never demanded more than she could give. And still, some part of her remained haunted by Lucian, not the Duke society admired. The lonely man she had glimpsed beneath his restraint. The man who now looked at her as though losing her had become unbearable. One snowy evening, Evelyn attended a small concert beside Adrian while London's elite gathered nearby. She laughed softly at something Adrian whispered. Across the hall, Lucian saw it. Jealousy struck him so fiercely he immediately left the ballroom for air. Outside, snow covered the palace gardens in white silence. Moments later, Evelyn followed. You disappeared. Lucian turned toward her slowly. Moonlight reflected against the snow around them. I cannot watch another man make you smile, he admitted quietly. The raw honesty in his voice shook her. Lucian stepped closer. I was blind, Evelyn. I thought loving you silently was enough because I could not risk needing someone so completely. She looked away painfully. You already did need me. Yes. Answer came immediately, no hesitation left now. I need you in every room I enter, every silence, every morning. I did not understand it until you stopped reaching for me. Emotion filled his usually restrained voice, and for the first time Evelyn saw fear openly in his eyes. I would give up every title I possess if it meant beginning again with you. Breath trembled slightly. For years, these were the words she dreamed of hearing, so why did they hurt now? Lucian, she whispered. You broke something in me. He closed his eyes briefly. I know. No, she said softly. I do not think you do. Finally gathered in her eyes then. The night of the banquet, I walked home alone in the rain because I realized loving you had become humiliating. I spent 7 years making excuses for your silence. Lucian looked devastated, and I would undo every moment if I could. But you cannot. The truth of it settled painfully between them. Suddenly shouting echoed from inside the palace. A servant rushed into the garden, breathless with panic. Lord, the East Carriage Bridge has collapsed in the storm. Captain Mercer was crossing toward the lower road. Evelyn went pale instantly. Without hesitation, Lucian grabbed his coat and ran toward the stables. The snowstorm had become vicious by the time they reached the broken bridge. Below, half-frozen river water crashed violently against shattered stone. Adrian clung injured to the overturned carriage while icy current dragged at him. Without pausing, Lucian climbed down into the freezing river himself. Lucian, Evelyn cried out. The water struck him brutally cold, but he forced his way toward Adrian through the current. For several terrifying moments, Evelyn could barely breathe. Then finally, Lucian dragged Adrian toward stable ground while guards rushed forward to help. Both men collapsed into the snow. Adrian coughed painfully, struggling for breath. Lucian stood unsteadily, soaked and shivering violently. Evelyn ran toward them both. But when her frightened hands reached instinctively for Lucian first, all three of them understood everything at once. Spring arrived slowly after the harsh winter. Snow melted from palace rooftops while white roses bloomed again across London gardens. And for the first time in years, Lucian Ashcombe no longer hid what he felt, not from society, not from himself. After the bridge accident, Adrian recovered fully within weeks. It was Adrian himself who ended the engagement gently one quiet afternoon beside the library fire. You still love him, he said softly. Evelyn lowered her eyes. I do not know how to stop. Adrian smiled sadly. Then I refuse to become the man you settle for while your heart belongs elsewhere. She nearly cried then, not because she did not care for Adrian, because she did deeply, but not the way she loved Lucian. Adrian kissed her hand once before leaving quietly, and Evelyn never forgot the kindness of it. Weeks later, the Royal Spring Concert filled the palace with music once more. This time, society watched Lucian and Evelyn carefully, not with mockery, with anticipation. Lucian crossed the ballroom toward her through candlelight and music, his expression softer than anyone had ever seen. Gone was the untouchable coldness that once surrounded him. Love had undone it completely. You look beautiful, he said quietly. Evelyn smiled faintly. You seem less frightening lately. That is your fault. A soft laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Lucian looked at her as though the sound alone healed something inside him. Then his expression turned serious. I know apologies cannot erase years of pain. She remained silent. But I will spend the rest of my life trying anyway. Emotion tightened her throat. Around them, the ballroom faded into distant blur. Lucian reached slowly into his coat pocket, not a grand royal ring, not diamonds. A small silver ribbon, faded with age. Evelyn stared in shock. You kept this. It fell from your dress the first winter we met, he said softly. I carried it for 7 years, filled her eyes instantly, because suddenly she understood. He had loved her far longer than either of them realized, just badly, quietly, fearfully. Lucian's voice lowered. I thought restraint made me strong, but loving you was the only thing that ever made me honest. The music swelled softly around them. And for the first time in years, Evelyn no longer saw the distant Duke society feared. She saw the lonely man who had finally learned how to love without pride. I cannot promise I know how to trust you completely yet, she whispered. You do not have to. I cannot become the woman who waits endlessly again. Lucian stepped closer carefully. Then this time, he said gently, I will be the one waiting for you. Her eyes filled completely then. Because after everything, the heartbreak, the humiliation, the longing, the regret, the years of silence, he finally understood. Love was never supposed to be endured alone. Slowly, Evelyn placed her hand in his. Lucian held it like something sacred, around them. The ballroom disappeared into candlelight and distant music, while spring rain touched the palace windows softly beyond the night. And for the first time in 7 long years, neither of them let go.